Welcome to episode 49 of Let's Talk Bitcoin for October 11th, 2013. Visit us at letstalkbitcoin.com for our daily guest blog, all our past episodes, and of course, tipping addresses. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today it's all about people. Amir Taki is a name that you should already know, but chances are good many of you don't. Bitcoin is different things to different people, but to Amir, it's an actionable chance to change the world for the betterment of mankind. Amir is a full-time developer on Bitcoin projects and recently completed an ambitious re-implementation of the Bitcoin protocol called Libitcoin to be more lightweight, clean, and modular. We end today's show with what he calls the Libitcoin Manifesto, and if you're interested in powerful perspectives, it's not to be missed. The day before the cryptocurrency conference, I caught up with Elizabeth Plauché, the recently elected member of the Bitcoin Foundation board. We talked about the journey and her priorities, we talk about Bitcoin in the Middle East, and where the next generation of adopters will come from. But first, Nathaniel Castro has a dream, and he's not the only one. He dreams of a future where we farm our fuel and have money backed and redeemable in it. Nathaniel paints the vision, and it's an appealing one, if we can only get from here to there. Anybody want to come along? Enjoy the show. So we're joined this morning by Nathaniel Castro. Nathaniel, you and I have been talking about, Bitcoin for the last couple of months, but you actually have an interesting project that kind of goes beyond Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I guess how I wound up finding Bitcoin initially is sort of a long story, and it involves something that's not exactly Bitcoin related, but actually has some parallels. Several years back, I sort of went down the rabbit hole of, how the world works, how things work, how money works, how economy works, and came to some conclusions regarding fiat currencies and peak oil issues and these kinds of things. And that was that we are totally screwed. Going down the fuel avenue of oil and an oil economy and these things, I realized that energy is wealth. And the ability to control energy is wealth. And, in third world countries where they can't have lights, that's poverty. I got really depressed, coming against the oil shortages, commodity shortages, and a currency that literally can't hold water. And so, I just started poking around, trying to figure some things out, trying to decide what to do. I got started researching local currencies a lot, and local currency schemes and Ithaca hours and this kind of stuff. And then I came across a guy who wrote a book called Alcohol Can Be a Gas, and his name's David Bloom. And, I'd heard some interviews with him basically when I had come across the biofuels avenue of, when I talk about it,
let's back up a second here. Let's back up a second here. I'm not sure that everybody really appreciates, because, peak oil is a term that gets thrown around, but I think there are a few different definitions of it. Peak oil is not to say that, no, correct me if I'm wrong here, peak oil is not to say that we're out.
Absolutely not.
It's just that we've hit the peak of production, and yet based on global growth,
exactly,
that doesn't work. The math doesn't work anymore in the same way that it
becomes
used to.
harder to get and more expensive and more scarce.
So do you think that we're at that point? We're approaching that point? We're past that point?
I don't know. There are arguments both ways. To be honest, I don't really care.
Right, it doesn't matter.
And quite frankly, I don't even care so much about the peak oil issue. I just don't like putting gas in my car. I don't like extracting something from the ground that spits carbon monoxide into the air. I would rather put something that's carbon neutral and semi-locally produced. Right. At least domestically.
Sure. Okay.
In my car. I don't like being forced to do anything. And so, I want to use ethanol and I want to use Bitcoin.
So to a certain extent, it sounds like it sounds like you agree with the government, who also likes ethanol and likes to incentivize ethanol.
Yeah. For very yes and no. Our current ethanol infrastructure is larger scale industrial. It's not necessarily what David Bloom or this book or I would necessarily advocate, which is more appropriate scale.
Okay. Well, I interrupted you, so let's get back to that. Can you tell me about what he's advocating?
He's advocating appropriate scale. The history of ethanol and alcohol in this country is fascinating. And, to anyone, I would encourage them to get the book, or at least dig up some David Bloom, lectures and understand a little bit about the history of alcohol in this country. The first car, the Model T, was both ran on ethanol as well as gasoline. And you could fill it up with gas in the city and then go out to the country and fill it up with ethanol, which is alcohol, which is basically moonshine. Any farm in the country had a still. And it wasn't until Prohibition that changed and it became illegal. But in my opinion, it should be something that everyone understands, that, you can produce fuel. You can run moonshine in your car right now, And that was something I didn't understand. And when I went down this road and I sort of came across ethanol, I saw, the headlines that everyone sees, that it's energy negative, that it takes more petrol to make, ethanol than you get energy out of it.
So is that not true, broadly
speaking?
True.
No, that's not true. It's largely based off of one guy's study, this guy David Pimentel, who was actually funded by, I think, Exxon,
so a little bit of a conflict.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a conflict. And it's also, his numbers are based off of, things like 1940s whiskey distilleries, which aren't, when it comes to the ethanol production, efficiency is extremely important, And so, when you take Brazil largely produces most of their fuel from sugarcane ethanol. And so there's that whole side of it is a whole long conversation. And I would really defer most of that to David Bloom and his book, because he's the professional. I'm just the student, But it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And it falls in line, I think, with some of the ideologies of, cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. That is, you guys had your chance. We're going to do it our way, and we're going to do it a different way. And we can do it ourselves.
So one of the other differences and also similarities, it seems like, is that where if you have a limited resource that is only geographically in some parts of the world and is certainly more accessible in some parts of the world where it is there than others, that's contrary to, say, something that is produced from a crop, from a grown thing. And moonshine, moonshine is not even really fuel specific. You can make it out of sugarcane. You can also make it out of potatoes.
You can make it out of a ton of different feedstocks.
Okay, so to a certain extent, an alcohol-based fuel system is a more decentralized system.
Absolutely. One aspect of it that I think is interesting from a theoretical perspective. I'm sure there are plenty of arguments that can be made for this and that and whatnot, but from a theoretical perspective, like I said, energy is wealth. And what alcohol is liquid solar energy. It is basically sunshine comes down, combines with carbon dioxide in the photosynthesis process, and creates carbohydrates. The yeast eat the carbohydrates, convert it to alcohol and carbon dioxide, and what you have left is alcohol. So when you distill out the alcohol, what you have left in your mash is everything that was already there. The proteins, the fats, the nutrients, the minerals. The only thing you're extracting is the alcohol, which is liquid sunshine. So now if energy is wealth and alcohol is liquid sunshine, we're being rained wealth on us every day. And it's just a matter of harvesting it, and that's what farmers do. That's what you're doing when you're, using the photosynthesis process to collect that energy.
So now I've also heard this argument made about solar, but it seems like this is a little bit different than solar in a couple of ways.
Yeah, you're probably talking about the photovoltaic sort of aspect of solar. Which
I am, yes. Yeah. The electric generation.
Yeah, that has all sorts of problems.
Okay. But this is, one of the main problems it has is that the places where you generate solar energy from photovoltaics generally isn't where you need to use it, and there's a loss over transmission. And that's not really the case with a liquid fuel source. With a liquid fuel source, it's very transportable.
Yeah, it's fungible. They used whiskey as currency back in the day, and there's a great book. It's fiction. It's called The Whiskey Rebellion, but it's based off of, it's historical fiction. Right. And it is that, this that is a big plot line. It's them paying their rent and whiskey and this kind of stuff, So whiskey as a currency and alcohol as a currency was kind of a running theme as I was doing all this research. So when I came across this, I said, I want to do that. I don't have a farm. This is generally something that would appeal to someone who maybe has a farm or has some, but I wanted to do it anyway. And I wanted to figure out, I don't want to work out the bugs. I want to work out the kinks. And I just dove right in. I ran into two major obstacles. Capital and, so you can get a permit to distill 5,000 gallons for fuel purposes for free. It's a free permit. It's really easy to get. And so I figured, okay, that's a good number. I'll shoot for that. I'm going to try to do a 5,000 gallon annual, sort of distillation setup. But, thinking about it, if I wanted to scale, there's a distribution issue as well. I have to basically, and what David Bloom proposes is community supported energy, like a community supported agriculture. Like, you basically pay your subscription at the beginning of the year, and you're allotted a certain amount of gallons throughout the year. And so it would be done as a collective. But, as that, to scale it up, it gets bigger. And so I started kind of, thinking of these different, but what about several, and how could you connect them and build a network and exchange in between them? And, I started to think of having a currency that would be backed by this locally produced ethanol, and so in effect, what you would do by subscribing to, at the beginning of the year would be essentially purchasing these credits that would then be exchanged as a local currency.
Okay, so let's say that we have one of these community-supported fuel. Is that what you call it?
Mm-hmm. Community-supported energy. CSC.
Energy.
Yeah.
CSC. Okay, so you subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to that. So you're saying that once you've subscribed to that and you have your set amount of credits for the year, you could sell some of those to me, and I could then be able to redeem them or also use it as a currency myself in the same way that you did.
Right. Well, and then the other part of it is, as well as that you're producing fuel, but like I said, after you distill the alcohol, you have this mash left, and that is a huge nutrient source. There are many things that can be done agriculturally from that, grow mushrooms, feed it to fish, grow vegetables, and all these other things. So it works in conjunction with the local farms. So you're producing fuel and you're producing food. And so say you're building this distillation facility, and you need some welding work done. Well, the welder, I'm not a welder, but I can find someone who can weld and can be paid in these credits, which can then in turn be redeemed to purchase fuel or vegetables or mushrooms or
Right.
I'm a big fan of local economies and local currencies, and they add far more value to a local economy than a national currency would. So this was the idea I was coming up with. And this also, in turn, raises the capital to build the facility.
Right. It's essentially, it's like a CSA, you're pre-ordering sort of.
It's essentially crowdfunding.
Yeah.
It's Kickstarter on a local level for, a very specific reason.
Right.
So, that was my bright idea. I'm like, okay, I want to figure this out. I want to design this currency. Because this was a problem I ran into. I don't have the funds to do this. It's kind of an obscure business model. I don't know if I could borrow the money for it. But I want to see it done. And I want to see it be done to be replicable and scalable. And so I wanted, I'm big on design. Another aspect to this whole ideology is the concept of permaculture. I don't know if you're familiar with permaculture.
I am a small amount, but why don't we recap just for the audience?
Well, permaculture is a method of designing agricultural landscapes to be permanent, like a forest or something. The way nature designs things, it doesn't design anything with waste. There are no carbon monoxide spitting in the air.
Well, I mean, let's dig into that a little bit. I live in a forest, right? So there are lots of trees in the forest. The trees have leaves. The leaves fall to the ground. Some people would characterize the leaves that fall to the ground as waste because they're no longer being used by the tree. So how does that tie in with permaculture?
Well, the leaves break down into soil, which in turn feeds the plants. Everything the Amazon forest.
So we're talking about the cycle of things.
The cycle of things,
right.
Yeah. And the stacking of functions. Probably couldn't give you the best examples right now, but there are the concept of things serving multiple purposes.
So it's almost like a systems-based approach to the growth cycle, as opposed to the monoculture that a lot of times you see used.
Exactly.
Right. So instead of there being one type of thing like fields of wheat, instead you have various things that all synergistically interact with each other.
Right. Polyculture, annuals, perennials, all working together. It's an observational design system. I recommend anyone also to look into permaculture and as an alternative to our current monoculture nightmare. Like I said, the fuel, food, and our currency issues were these glaring problems in society, in my opinion. And, monoculture, peak oil, and fiat currency.
So just, again, real quick, I don't mean to keep, we're covering a lot of concepts here, and I want to make sure that we're keeping people with us. Why is a monoculture bad in agriculture?
several reasons. One of them, as monoculture, basically opens up to pest problems. There's no, if a potato bug sees a field of potatoes, it's just open season. It's just a smorgasbord. But if it's polyculture and you have several different types of crops, it's not as easy pickings for,
I see.
one insect to come in.
So one type of insect could come in and infest the entire thing, as opposed to only being able to affect a smaller portion of it.
Right. And you see, certain aberrations starting to arise with, you've got Monsanto and the Roundup stuff, and occasionally you see some, I don't know if this is entirely true, I should, but you see resistances to certain pesticides.
Well, you see evolutionary traits evolve over time. Yeah, It makes sense,
And so that, and as well as a lot of the ammonia-based fertilizers, which are petroleum-based fertilizers. Mm-hmm. So if peak oil is an issue, that's an issue. So yeah, the monocultural agriculture process versus a permaculture polycultural process, are polar opposites.
Okay, I got you there. Great. We can. Okay, yeah. back to the story.
Okay, so but permaculture also incorporates. There's a permaculture economic model, which is looking at economics from a local scale. And I like to say stacking functions from a currency perspective. So designing this local currency that would fund the building of the facility as well as add value to the community, serves multiple purposes, in my opinion. So, from a permaculture perspective, that's kind of how I was looking at it. So, yeah, I have a bit of a technical background, and I know software and hardware, but I didn't want to get into this and have to man these servers and deal with basically a centralized system that I would have to babysit and maintain and all these things. So, I'm a musician. And I remember coming across Napster for the first time and saying, the music industry is really going to get hit with this one, and seeing it all unfold and understanding really the power of decentralization and that, you can't shut it down kind of thing. And so I was looking for a decentralized open source digital currency, or I figured someone had to be, there were several things that I had found already, other software projects, other digital currency concepts, that people were playing around with. But I figured someone had to be working on some kind of open source decentralized version. And so that's what I Googled, and that's how I found Bitcoin. And it was early stages, but because I'd done so much research on local currencies and alternative currencies, it just blew me away, So I kind of lost myself in the Bitcoin thing for a while, because Bitcoin is so huge. And prior to finding Bitcoin, trying to design a currency that would add, give value to us was prior to Bitcoin. So when I discovered Bitcoin, then it was all post-Bitcoin. Bitcoin solved all these problems without having to back it with ethanol. It's inherently valuable as it is. So that was just fascinating. It was fascinating, but it didn't solve the problem that I was trying to solve, which was issuing a currency that it would be backed, that it would be decentralized and whatnot. So I kind of set that project aside, the whole ethanol thing. I chipped away at it and whatnot, but it wasn't until the conference, the San Jose conference, where I kind of realized that with the colored coins and Ripple and open transactions, I bumped into a fellow traveler there, and the colored coins actually facilitates that more to the extent that I was looking for. It solves the problem that I was looking for. And prior to going to the conference, I didn't really understand Ripple. Wasn't sure what they were trying to accomplish, what was going on. But after I talked to the guys, I realized that's exactly what they're doing is making a way to issue a currency that would be backed by, I think they call them gateways, but it's essentially a trusted third party. So you've got colored coins, which are a decentralized asset-backed currency that kind of lives on the blockchain. You've got Ripple, which is a more centralized, I think, version. And then you've got open transactions, which is
the federated
version, but you've got these different attempts at solving this problem. So I decided to pick it back up and at least work on the designing of that aspect of it.
Right.
It's a large, complicated project.
Okay. So does that bring us up to the present?
That brings us up to the present.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Well, That I don't know. To be honest, there's still there are a few things that I was kind of waiting for to come through. David Bloom has his distillation company, and so he has clients that are purchasing distillation facilities from him, possibly proposing some of these ideas to him. There's also this enzyme I'm trying to get a hold of to make it easier and less expensive. It combines the fermentation with the saccharification process. And that's another thing. And also, I'm not a programmer, so when it comes to actually making some of the colored coin stuff work, I kind of just have to wait for it to evolve.
So, you're talking about colored coins. Could this be implemented through an alternative cryptocurrency, or
like an alternative blockchain?
Yeah, like an alternative blockchain.
Initially I thought about that when I first, that's why I was looking for an open source version, was because I was possibly going to, just use it and design it. I'm not the biggest fan of alternative blockchains simply because of the hash rate issue. So the hash rate, though, is tied to issuance, basically. I mean, it's tied to issuance, it's tied to security. There are a few other things it's tied to. But it seems like what you're talking about is almost like, your proof of work can only be done by a certain type of person with a certain type of asset, property essentially, who is able and has the equipment or at least part of that process to make it. So to a certain extent, it's almost like the issuance doesn't come from the blockchain; it comes from real life and then needs to be translated into the blockchain. Right. Okay. Well, yeah, exactly.
And then there's like a redemption mechanism that you have to develop,
exactly.
where like they can trade on their own, but at some point. At any point, somebody can take one or many of these and redeem them for the actual fuel.
Right. And that's where, you're right in the sense that security is not as paramount because you're dealing with...
It's hard to make it.
It's hard to make it. You're dealing with third parties. It's kind of hard to fraud the system. Because essentially, if you're using colored coins and it's like if you have a coupon or a credit card.
Right.
Anyone can see your credit card number. If they want to steal from you, they can.
Right.
You can leave the private key exposed and, or I don't know. I haven't quite figured out exactly how to do it or how to propose it. It's more just.
So you're still definitely thinking this one out.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it out.
Yeah.
Which is why I've stayed really quiet about this because I haven't quite figured it out.
Right. I think it's a really interesting idea. I think that actually sounds pretty actionable too. That's fairly plausible. We hear about altcoin concepts and different colored coin concepts occasionally.
Yeah. Well, and this is definitely it's a bit of a departure from the Bitcoin world, which is very blockchain focused. And. Or Bitcoin focused.
Well, we've been talking about this global local thing that cryptocurrencies enable. Bitcoin certainly is something. But Bitcoin, for the purposes that you're talking about, where the focus is more on local, because it's all about, it's about developing and enabling relationships between producers and consumers, and then the ability to trade is really almost secondary to that because the only relationship is between the producer and the consumer. It just depends on who the consumer winds up being. You trade who that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the issues I was trying to solve is possibly expanding this local network. So, this is great if you want to drive around your local city, but what if you want to drive across country?
Sure.
Ideally you could have a network and an iPhone app that would link you up to, local ethanol producers that, would be willing to participate in this network. So I'm still thinking it through.
Fair enough. Well, Nathaniel, that's a really interesting idea. We look forward to hearing how it develops. Are you looking for help at this point? Is there a way people can contact you?
Yeah. Openalcohol.org is the website that I've been sitting on for a while. info@openalcohol.org be a way to get a hold of me. And any ideas, thoughts, help, I'm actually just kind of happy to get this out of my head and out.
I can appreciate that. So are you intending to do this as an open source project?
Absolutely. Open source and open model. Ideally I wanted to kind of take the concept and do it and prove that it could work, at least even the production of the ethanol and run the numbers and do it as an open business model, because, and I implore anyone to get the book and take a look at it.
What was the name again?
Alcohol Can Be a Gas by David Bloom. Because he proposes an open business model that's solid. It's a solid, added.
Well, it's something that's valuable that you're talking about. It's easier to say that about that than it is about it intangible.
Yeah, and it's provides employment and value to local economies, and all these things that seem to be a problem.
Sustainability.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you for stopping by today, Nathaniel.
Absolutely.
Glad we got a chance
me.
to do this.
Yeah. Me too.
You are listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin, the premier audiocast providing news and insights that cover the rapidly evolving world of digital money. Our twice-weekly shows include analysis of late-breaking news, updates on key technical, business, and regulatory issues, and in-depth interviews with the key people driving the new digital economy. Let's Talk Bitcoin offers sponsors an attractive way to reach a targeted and savvy audience. For more information, email sponsors@letstalkbitcoin.com. More than 300,000 users and counting trust blockchain.info. It's a Bitcoin wallet service and a wealth of Bitcoin information, and it's completely free to use. With a blockchain.info wallet, you'll get the convenience of a web wallet and the security of a desktop client. Blockchain.info is also a block explorer. You can use it to see Bitcoin transactions in real time, check the balance of any Bitcoin address, and view many handy Bitcoin charts, all for free. See what they have to offer today at blockchain.info.
Right now we're joined by Elizabeth Plauché, who recently won the first elected board seat on the Bitcoin Foundation individual board. So Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Adam. It's a privilege to get to speak to you guys today. Yeah, so I'm really excited, first of all, to serve on the Bitcoin Foundation board. I see that there's a lot of potential for just growth of the Bitcoin community, and I've been privileged to serve with Bitcoin Magazine. So it's a joy to be involved in the Bitcoin community. And
we just ended what was a much more contentious election than I really thought it would be. And the candidates that were running were absolutely incredible as far as their credentials were concerned. What do you credit your victory to?
You know, one of the main things about this election showed all the wonderful candidates who were involved and how many ideas there are. And I guess I was able to get some support by being available to a lot of the different members of the community and getting ideas forward and having some more organization to my platform. And I really look forward to working with the other candidates who ran. It was a very close win, but they have tons of wonderful ideas regarding regulation, specifically international outreach. I see that this is an opportunity for the Bitcoin community to come together so we can all work together, and I'm really looking forward to working with the other candidates.
Where do you see the education movement going now? Because it seems like the problem that we had 6 months ago, education was much more of a problem. There are better examples now. What do you think is important to move to next?
Well, I'm very privileged actually to now serve on the Education Committee on the Bitcoin Foundation, and I see that right now we just need better organization of our resources. We've got various news sites, we have different forums and whatnot, but it's absolutely key that we get the word out more and also be more in tune to the individuals who don't yet know about Bitcoin, but who are warmer audiences. So, anything from, more limited government type of perspectives, but also other groups of people around the world, women in particular, who need to learn about how Bitcoin applies to their lives. So I think it's going to be moving Bitcoin away from just a currency that, say, software developers use to something that even women who run household finances can use.
So what's required to make that happen?
We just need more resources out there. So specifically with the Bitcoin Foundation, I hope to help it become more of an aggregate, an information aggregate, so have a better listing of resources and even simple how-to guides. Sometimes people just want things consolidated into a few bullet points, just how it applies to their life.
So use cases, right? That's what we're talking about? We're talking about, like, there need to be use cases where I, as a woman, would then look at this and say, oh, yes, this applies to my life. So what is that? Is that, I'm trying to figure out what that is. Is that educational materials? Is that better wallet tools that are more usable?
Educational materials and also organization of those materials. Also, people having an opportunity to share how Bitcoin's impacted their lives. So, for example, there are a lot more women getting involved. There's a Women in Bitcoin group that started up on the West Coast here in the United States. There's also, even for example, someone, the Bitcoin wife. She has a daily blog where she puts out information about how she as a wife and a mother is using Bitcoin. So more people in the community speaking out, and then also, how-to guides that are more comprehensive as well in terms of wallet development and also Bitcoin businesses, and then taking it to the next level in terms of, regulation and policy.
So before you got into the Bitcoin space, you were involved in Middle East policy.
Yes.
And that's an area that's important to you. That's a passion area for you.
Yes.
So we've had conversations before, and you've told me that Bitcoin has a real impact on that type of culture too, almost even more so than in other places. Why is that?
Well, Bitcoin opens up the door for freedom of speech and individual rights around the world. In a lot of these countries, unfortunately, government has a very constricting place in terms of finances. And for example, right now, Bitcoin is growing in Iran. The Iranian rial is just sinking in value due to inflation, and Bitcoin provides a way out. Bitcoin, again, is a catalyst towards that more privacy, decentralized type of movement as well. Another place, too, where Bitcoin is just growing tremendously is Israel. You're seeing that there's a lot of technological development in these areas, and Bitcoin, again, is, I'd say, a slap in the face to a lot of regimes that are oppressive. And it's also a gateway, too, for various countries that are, unfortunately, have, again, the inflating currency and then also subject to sanctions.
One of the major platforms that you ran on was this idea of internationalizing the Bitcoin Foundation structure, right?
Right.
And yet, you are an American citizen, which seems to be a bit of a contradiction for some voters out there.
Right.
So do you think that that matters at all? I mean, clearly you don't think that that matters, but tell me, so I mean, how do we do this? How do we take this structure that started off as a very U.S.-centric organization and that looks like it's, continuing along that way, at least as far as how it's interfacing with regulators and rulemakers? It's not going over to Europe and doing that. So what's the path forward for internationalization?
Well, I see that there are tons of phenomenal Bitcoin leaders around the world. Several of the candidates who ran are really spearheading movements within their country, and I really do feel like it's important that we continue to develop Bitcoin Foundation chapters in various countries, and the process has already been started, and I look forward to being more involved in that after our first board meeting in October. I just having these leaders provide reports back to the foundation on how Bitcoin specifically grows in their country. I'm just amazed at all the different conferences that are taking place. We've got several coming up in Canada in October, then we've got in India in December, and Argentina in December, and just various conferences around the world, and that's another important way to hook in members, of those societies and get them connected personally to Bitcoin. So I see that, again, the foundation, yes, it is geographically a points based in the United States, but at the same time, the international membership is just growing, and we need to be able to have leaders in those countries strengthened with tools. And even another component is the educational component and getting resources translated into various languages, whether it's Chinese or Spanish or you name it. There's the strengthening leaders there, providing tools and resources and educational material, and also thinking about various conferences in those countries.
Do these wind up being autonomous individual units, or do they wind up being chapters?
I don't know yet the full direction of the foundation, and I look forward to learning more, but I would say more so chapters. Obviously, there already are autonomous units, and anything from Bitcoin meetup groups to larger, there's a Bitcoin embassy in Canada, for example, but it's cool to have the model, which I proposed in my platform of organized decentralization. So each chapter being unique, but also kind of connected to a core ideology involving Bitcoin.
Right, but ideology doesn't necessarily imply. I guess the question that I'm asking is more along the lines of, is the U.S. Foundation the most important, or is it the center? Or are the rules the center? Are the ideals the center?
Well, it's hard to say because, it's a work in progress, and the U.S. Foundation was just founded a little over a year ago. So I would say that this is an opportunity for us to try and see the model that works best. So right now, foundation chapters are developing around the world, and it will be interesting to see how that all evolves. And obviously, the standards for one foundation chapter, say in India, might be very different than one in Germany or the UK. And we just have to see what works best, because in the end of the day, we all have the same goal to strengthen Bitcoin and get the word out. So that's the most important thing, instead of getting caught up in the rules and regulations of all of it.
Stepping away from the foundation and your role there for a second, we've just seen the demise of Silk Road, it seems like. And this had a kind of pronounced impact on the Bitcoin market, although it seems to have been very brief. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, I have a sense that if this had happened a year ago, this would have been a much bigger deal as far as both the price, but also in terms of the perceived, the perception of Bitcoin. And I've been a little surprised at how little of an impact it seems to have had, even though this is, arguably one of the original and largest markets that accepted Bitcoin. And it did a lot of volume too. Why do you think, what do you think is happening here?
Well, I think that Bitcoin is more and more becoming a legitimate currency. I mean, it's a force to be reckoned with. If you think about it, there are so many businesses now accepting and using Bitcoin for legal activities. And, Bitcoin is still strong despite the close down of Silk Road. And again, it just shows also excess government regulation. Bitcoin has come out in the top again. And a year ago, not as many businesses were using Bitcoin. Bitcoin wasn't in the news as much. The value of Bitcoin wasn't as high as it is today. But, you can tell that something is strong if it continues to take hits. And I just see that this is another opportunity for governments around the world to listen and wake up and see that people want to put their finances, invest their time and money into something that is stronger than most fiat currencies.
I actually wanted to ask you about that. So, we talk a lot about regulation, and one of the questions we don't talk about a lot is what would good regulation look like? What would a beneficial outcome, but realistic, not like a they say that they're going to completely ignore it and you don't have to pay taxes on it. I don't really think that that's in the cards. But is there a good regulatory outcome to be had?
Well, I would just say clarity is necessary. At this point, sitting here in the United States, we really don't have clarity much on tax law. We just need a better idea of what to expect. A lot of businesses especially are going to be hit hard if they don't know specifically how to operate. Also, the government in particular needs to understand the difference between an exchange and a Bitcoin-related business. That's what's needed. I don't think regulations are needed, and I am a proponent of the most limited government type of standpoint. But again, clarity is essential. So how can a business know what to expect if the guidelines that FinCEN put out are very ambiguous?
Right, and the expectation is very important because expectation allows you to plan accurately.
Exactly, yep.
The Bitcoin community has grown in waves, and I think that the early waves, a lot of them could be characterized as crypto anarchists or idealists or people who embraced Bitcoin because it solved a problem that they had for a long time. And then we've had entrepreneurial people enter the space and start to build businesses that were a little bit different, wasn't so much about the ideology. I'm curious, where do you think the next generation of Bitcoin users is going to come from, or what types, how do we go about reaching those people?
Well, I think it's absolutely crucial to look at college campuses and universities. This is where most movements start. And unfortunately, a lot of college students here in the U.S. specifically have been taught Keynesian economics, and they need to recognize just the value of, laissez-faire, free market economics, Austrian School of Economics, and how Bitcoin ties into all of that. So there's huge growth potential because a lot of these students in the United States and around the world are going to be graduating from school with hefty student loans, looking for careers, and Bitcoin is a promising solution. There's tons of growing opportunities in the Bitcoin space. In addition, it's an investment opportunity. I'd say that working with just kind of reaching out to college students, getting them motivated about this, because it encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses individual responsibility, it encompasses libertarian ideals, it encompasses limited government principles, it encompasses financial future and growth. So that's a huge market. I hope to kind of press this forward on the Bitcoin Foundation board just to be thinking about the future, because people need to understand their children, for example, have a financial future, and the best financial future is invested in Bitcoin. Most
of the time when we talk to people in the space, they're actually not the college age. If they are college age, they tend to be in like master's programs, but they're generally older than 25. It's kind of rare to find somebody under 25 these days who's seriously active in the Bitcoin space. So you think that the younger generation, like 18 to like 23 demographic, that's the thing?
Well, I definitely think so, and there have already been various meetups on college campuses. I mean, the meetup system is really neat, getting people to come together with these similar ideas, and there are various groups on campus that are already taking to this. For example, Students for Liberty. I'm excited to meet with some Students for Liberty representatives here at the cryptocurrency conference and just kind of talk with them, strategize, get a climate for what it's like on college campuses. But certainly there are a lot of different movements, anything from various political groups at the college level, which translate into the national level. It's just an opportunity for people to kind of find their niche and then move forward and see how it can impact a future career as well, and get them connected to movers and shakers in the community.
So are we talking then specifically about people who are already predisposed to this sort of thinking? Because again, you talk about Students for Liberty, that's a group that, they understand the problem with money and therefore they can appreciate the better money. But that's the thing that I always run into when I talk to people who are too young, is that they don't have the experience with the current system to understand why it sucks.
Right. Well, there are different political type of groups on campuses, and I think it's just showing individuals how Bitcoin applies to their life. So providing them with resources, and honestly, a lot of movements are started by finding people who are leaders in the community, regardless of if they're involved in Bitcoin or not, and getting them latched in and helping teach them how it applies to their life and helping them then evangelize to their peers about it.
So to get viral.
Yeah, it does get viral really fast, especially when you start learning about Bitcoin and all the benefits.
Right. Well, Elizabeth, thank you very much. We're going to go enjoy this party at the BitPay office, and it's great to have you again on Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
EasyDNS is the Swiss Army knife for your domain names, helping meet their customers' individual needs since 1998. EasyDNS has been an outspoken critic of SOPA and CISPA. EasyDNS was an early supporter of Bitcoin, and now they are proud to sponsor this show. Do business with a company that shares your values. Get a 13% discount when you pay with Bitcoin. Go to bitcoin.easydns.com and be sure to use discount code LTB.
Hi, this is Jason King, founder at Sean's Outpost, and you are listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin. Sean's Outpost is a homeless outreach in Pensacola, Florida, and we are proudly powered by Bitcoin. To date, over 13,000 meals have been fed to the homeless in our area, all purchased with Bitcoin and through the generosity of the cryptocurrency community. Read more about us at SEANSOutpost.com. Food, shelter, Bitcoin, everybody. Sean'sOutpost.com.
As humans, we share little in common, but that little we do share is the deep core of our being. We search for purpose, we are curious, and we thrive on new information. Our self-awareness, rationality, and sapience are the high-level features that make up a person. They are our capacity for good or evil. As people, we need to ask ourselves whether we act with purpose, intent, and ambition. Ask how we are defining ourselves and what are the values that our lives are promoting. Are you taking concrete steps now to achieve your objective? It's important we ask ourselves these questions and decide which end of the spectrum between liberty and security we fixate on. A safe life of luxury and comfort closed in by four walls, or a life of freedom, freedom to make love, play loud music, create art, wrestle naked, and raise confident kids that think. In criticizing the world we're born into, it's easy to point the finger at this or that politician or resign problems to circumstance. And with the perceived lack of power to concede the situation is unfixable and utterly broken. But if we want to know who to blame, we need only to look into a mirror. We support the situation. It is people, not rulers, who create the world of today. Some of us conclude that the situation is just a normal state of affairs and simply human nature, as if there were one human nature. And disregarding that, we all evolve and grow as people in different directions during our lives. Think of the values we are taught as children, how we are taught to behave as civic citizens, the phrases we are told by our parents, teachers, and friends. The system is not just the state and corporations. It is a machine encompassing all spheres of life. You might hear, for example, respect for authority figures is a sign of maturity. Men with good jobs dress smart and respectably. Work hard for a good job and a good life. Retire young. Don't talk to strangers. Life is about money. Money makes the world go round. I was told all of these sentences in my life, that learning to accept authority is an inevitable part of growing up, that my character is defined by how I look, not how I act, that my single purpose is to be a work slave, to avoid interaction with random unknowns outside my circle, and the responsibility starts and stops with myself. All of them are bad values. We are not born with these values. They are hardwired into us from a young age. Luckily, knowledge feeds the unlearning process, and the internet is an unlearning tool. Have you ever questioned the 15 years of our precious childhood from kindergarten to high school? We attend a prison with fixed schedules and dinner at an allocated time. We're forced to wear uniforms. If you want to speak, you need to raise your hand. If you need the toilet, you must ask permission. And the lessons amount to little more than drilling information with the given promise of honors and qualifications. The reward for faithfully jumping all these hoops for 15 years is a worthless piece of paper that isn't even required for a job at McDonald's. And the workers still need training. Our children aren't taught how to cook a healthy meal, grow a garden, or even a rudimentary concept of how to organize or lead groups of people without even a glimmer of understanding on how to resolve conflicts without violence, or the principles of logic and how to question an ideology. Kids are taught how to sit at a desk and listen obediently as the world is packaged into neat little boxes. School is little more than a training camp for salaried drones designed to format young minds for a life of subservience, too stupid to question the system itself or the authority of those running it. We are not born with bad values. They are wired into us from a young age. Let's talk about good values. Responsibility is about fulfilling your needs to have a dignified existence and then expanding that circle to the people around you to help bring up and out the potential of other free people. Together, we can thrive. Community and collective action is absolutely essential if we want to rise up. The system thrives by separating people into isolated pockets who get their information from TV and their culture from corporations. United together, we are stronger. Vires in numeris. Independence and autonomy is the ability to act. If we always need third parties and central organizations to resolve disputes, solve our problems, and coordinate us, then we are doomed as a species. Central authorities are always a magnet for corruption, and that will never change. Learn to be self-reliant and make things happen. Understanding is not an easy skill to develop, but it is very powerful. Being able to get into people's minds, to listen, and to be able to meet their needs is leadership. A leader serves and inspires people into action, whereas a ruler uses coercion. For all their grandeur and force, rulers cannot harness the real potential of people. Nobody thinks under duress. We need assertive individuals who stand unyielding for what they believe in. If you know something is right, then fight for your vision. It will happen. The system feeds off passivity, and giving consent to its exclusive hold of force feeds the machine. Lastly, let's approach the world as artists and bring creativity to our work. The world is diverse, colorful, and vibrant. Humans are not meant to live in little boxes and grey concrete jungles. Live art and be creative. Your work is art. Good art makes people think and feel. The role of good people is the vanguard of tomorrow. Plato said, "The penalty good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men." It's an old story. David versus Goliath. Starfleet rebels versus Galactic Death Star. Anarchist revolutionaries versus the fascist. Both sides have existed for centuries, and the struggle continues. However, in recent decades, with the unique political situation, the internet, and a dawning awareness among people, the balance of power is shifting in our favor this time around. Humans can look to a future less dominated by the command hierarchies of the past and more by thriving marketplaces of knowledge and merit. I remember an Amateur Blue webpage in the summer of 2010 describing a peer-to-peer currency that cannot be controlled by governments or central banks. Extremely skeptical, I dived into the code and discovered an idea which burnt itself in my memory. My mind latched onto Bitcoin. I realized this unknown project is the future of money. Bitcoin is a tool of resistance gifted to us by Satoshi. The idea has escaped, and the idea of cryptocurrency will not be stopped. Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency will succeed. Bitcoin is about direct trade from peer to peer, the purest value transfer possible between two or more people, a direct and personal interaction over digital infrastructure. Welcome to the future of the black market. Real values, real people, and uncorrupted markets. The internet is a tool of freedom and self-determination. Meddling in its mechanics is destructive. Whenever a website is blocked, a protocol is corrupted at some low level, or undesirable traffic shaping occurs, then seismic ripples of censorship and destruction lead to degradation of the network. The internet is fundamental to humanity and must be protected at all costs. Bitcoin is no different and must be kept pure. There are real risks to Bitcoin. The protocol is not fixed, is not an axiomatic system established by Satoshi. It's been constantly changing, rapidly evolving, and the pace is accelerating. The risks are more subtle and probable than a government demanding changes to the fundamentals of Bitcoin's protocol. The chilling effect of self-censorship. We don't even need to touch the protocol. As Bitcoin grows, the inevitable specialization is kicking in as the blockchain is moving towards specialized services, and the future of full Bitcoin nodes is on the server, not personal computers. We have to wake up, adapt, and work with the reality rather than persisting in self-denial. If development is too centralized with a small core infrastructure, then businesses will put real pressure to have features that destroy the integrity of the Bitcoin network. The excuse will be to protect themselves from liability, self-censorship. And what they demand does not have to be protocol changes. They will demand features in the software they use, software which remains compatible with the network, but works against the interests of individuals, small businesses, and the black market. The possible malicious scenarios are endless. Stuff like peer-to-peer blacklists to create a legitimate walled garden, or tracking technologies like large databases of IP addresses to triangulate where transactions came from. At the other end of the spectrum is putting development effort into diversifying the ecosystem to protect against censorship, and proxy relay nodes, anonymizing mixers, small privacy tweaks, and other technologies. That's where developers who believe in Bitcoin should devote time to. Corporations are powerful enough. To developers, serve your community. A diversified Bitcoin of many wallets and implementations is a strong and pure Bitcoin. To protect the integrity of the network, we need to eliminate single points of failure. An inbred Bitcoin with the same software code everywhere shares the same weaknesses and is susceptible to the same attacks. A single pathogen can wipe out a genetically homogeneous population, and centralized software is vulnerable to the dictates of whoever controls development of that software code, and any dictates pressured onto them. The implications of a diversified Bitcoin is a Bitcoin difficult to control. It also sets the protocol in stone, as nobody has sole power over the standard. Consensus from many parties is the way forwards. The proper way to develop a standard is by having many different competing parties that require mutual interest and agreement to pass through changes. History is rife with abuse, like when Internet Explorer dominated the browser market and constantly broke the web standard by introducing proprietary extensions. Their motive was to swallow the market and lock users into Internet Explorer. The result was a broken web. A monopoly likes to dominate the market, shut out competitors, and erect high barriers to entry. A diversified ecosystem protects against feature creep or bloat of the standard. Extra features go beyond the basic function of Bitcoin and so can result in overcomplication rather than simple design. Viewed over a longer time period, extra or unnecessary features seem to creep into the system beyond the initial goals and the small code of 15,000 lines set by Satoshi. The result? will be a Bitcoin that becomes increasingly difficult to understand or implement without huge initial investment of resources, time, and people. No single person will fully understand Bitcoin anymore, and development monopolies will be further enforced. Linux is the most secure operating system because of its diversity. There is no single one exploit that is universal across all versions of Linux. Bitcoin must evolve in the same way to become a resilient and tough system able to serve a global audience. A massive standard is difficult to re-implement. Satoshi Nakamoto gifted us a small, focused, and pure Bitcoin. There is no need for compromise. Let's push for our complete vision. Bitcoin is here. We have the initiative and we make our stand now. We have the power and now is the time. Not later, now. Within a century of the printing press being invented, wars, social strife, and revolutions erupted across Europe. Old kings, revered religious leaders, and tyrannical rulers were removed from power. People could now read what was written in their Bibles. Mass printing of the Bible was subversive, and what was written in their Bibles is not what they were being fed. In the face of hard evidence, people dispelled old notions of what their religion was saying. Our economy will change. Bitcoin will rise as a fundamental technology. Seeking approval from the halls of Washington and consent from the status quo is mere pandering as lapdogs at the feet of the system. Why would you willingly give your power away? Are you stupid? Some people make the argument that throwing Bitcoin under the bus and corrupting the core of this technology is needed to help businesses which specialize in the exchange of failing government fiat paper money with Bitcoins. Are we willing to sacrifice the purity of this tool for a few short-term gains that primarily benefit US corporations? Do they serve the need of Bitcoin? Others even go further, arguing that we need the masses, that being a majority protects people from assaults, typical herd mentality, and that regulation and the measures to implement them are a typical process of acceptance. I have news for you. Majorities have been slaughtered like pigs all throughout history. Being pragmatic is code speak for obedience and cowardice. Bitcoin is the future. Act like you believe it. Act to prevent corruption of the system. Act to prevent Bitcoin being co-opted in any way. We must preserve the principles of Satoshi Nakamoto. We have the power and the initiative. You know the truth of the world. Stop supporting your own enemies. We don't need them. They need us. You are the one empowering them. Draw your consent. Withdraw your support. Don't accept their terms or try to win a game where they set the rules. Don't try to win your ruler's favor. Don't bother to beg for welfare or good treatment. Worst of all, don't help them hunt down your neighbor. Time we stick our flag in the ground and make our stand. Wired reported in September that the Bitcoin Foundation is joining a task force to combat child pornography. Our task force will offer balanced, effective solutions for policymakers, law enforcement, regulators, and the public. The task force, which launched in August, is not solely focused on child exploitation. The report detailed how criminal and terrorist organizations have turned to digital currency to reap profits from drug trafficking, prostitution, and the dissemination of child abuse images. Close quote. One day, master told slave, "Do this small thing and everything is fine. Keep up the good work." The slave was happy because not much was asked, so he started to create something really cool. The master walked in a week later and said, "Do this as well." The slave was shocked, but master, we had an agreement. You said I only needed to do this. Master responded, "I changed my mind. You need to do this as well." The slave reluctantly agreed. At least it wasn't that bad. Over time, the master more and more increased his demands on the slave. By now, the slave had created something totally wonderful and was dependent on it, but the master controlled his work and owned him. The task of an activist is not to negotiate systems of power with as much personal integrity as possible. It's to dismantle those systems. Close quote. The road is long and real work is needed. Less talk and more action. There are too few people in this world working on worthwhile things for the people. But even though the workload is immense and daunting, there are concrete steps to achieve the global objective. Truth happens. We will succeed. Don't wait around for others to take action. We must dive headfirst without regard for consequences and break the inertia of passivity. When enough people do this, real change will occur. Fight for what you believe in. If you believe and uphold a truth, then all your energy should be devoted to your objectives. Anytime you are accepting compromise, you are acting against your objective. None of us are pure. We are all flawed and imperfect. But as good people, we must strive for uncomplicated directness in our actions. Our actions must be transparent in motive and pure in reasoning. The power is within us. It always has been.
Thanks for listening to episode 49 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for today's show was provided by Nathaniel Castro, Elizabeth Plauché, and Amir Taki. Additional editing was provided by Matthew Zipkin, on-location engineering by Crystal Levine, and music was provided by Jared Rubens. If you can't get enough original thought and discussion, read our daily blog at letstalkbitcoin.com. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at theweeklybitcoin.com. To get in touch, send me mail directly at adam@letstalkbitcoin.com or visit letstalkbitcoin.com/talk to be directed to our listener subreddit. See you next time.